removal of the radio from Mazda CX5 or similar Mazda vehicles. What you need to do is start with this piece of trim here, and you want to use tools like these. I bought these from Harbor Freight Tools, made in China, but they work really well. So what you want to do is carefully pry it evenly so you don't break anything. So we'll get behind it, starting on the end. If you start to see any white in the plastic develop as you push on it, stop. You want to do it, like I said, evenly across. If you do it this way, you're much less likely to break one of the clips. Once you get to a certain point, then you can then grab it with your hand, and again, both hands evenly, just pop the clips out. Watch out on the end so you do it evenly. You don't want to do one of these deals, and then that's how you'll break the clip. So you have to pop it out evenly like that. And once you get this trim piece out, it's just a matter of disconnecting these connectors like so. There's a little plastic push spring clip here. You just push on that and pull it out. You can set it up on the dash out of the way. Then next, what you need to do is, you can probably start by just pulling on this plastic trim piece. There we go. And you just pull this off. And make sure that these little white clips are still on the trim piece. Sometimes they come off and fall inside the dash, so you want to retrieve those because they're hard to find. Pressure. There we go. Pull the radio out, and here we are. Thing I like to use is one of these picks. Again, you can pick this up at Harbor Freight Tools. They're very inexpensive. It just helps when you're taking the factory connectors off and you're trying to push the those little spring tabs. You just take this and push on the spring tab and you pull the clip right out. Works very well. There we go. See? Pull that right out, no problem. Alright. And then we will just disconnect all our stuff here. So I have, since this is an aftermarket radio and I have amplifiers, I have RCAs, or these are low-level inputs, or outputs in this case, input on the amplifier side. I've marked these with a T. Since this is an active system, the T stands for tweeters. Red is always right. In my case, that's what I do. So I have W here for woofer, and then this one is obviously different. I know that's my subwoofer amplifier. So I'll disconnect those. Come on. There you go. And then once we get all that stuff taken out, we can take the radio out. That's a Pioneer 1330 NEX. I'm very happy with this radio. Fantastic radio. I have in my other vehicle, a Pioneer BHS 5800 that has the same, basically the same capabilities. This one has Apple CarPlay. That's the only difference capability-wise. But what you really notice is how much faster this one switches in between the different functions compared to the one I bought a year ago. Why am I taking out an aftermarket radio that I just installed last weekend? I bought it from Crutchfield. They have two options for your factory radio interface. They basically have the Crux, I don't know if you can see that, radio, Mazda, steering wheel switch. This works, but it's very basic, and it doesn't have, it doesn't provide certain things like an input for the reverse switch, and having some issues with it. So I've decided to get the PAC Radio Pro interface that's recommended by Crutchfield with this radio for a Mazda CX5. So I'm going to give this a try, and hopefully this works better. A little more money, but you get what you pay for. So you'll see in this wiring harness here that I don't use any butt connectors or crimp connectors or posi connectors or any of those things. I've used them in the past. I've learned my lesson. I've had nothing but problems with them. Some people have great luck. So now I solder and shrink wrap all my connections. So you can see here, this is shrink wrap. Even the ones that I'm not using that have just cut ends, I'll put a piece of shrink wrap on it instead of electrical tape. I've gone into installs where I've used electrical tape years later, and the electrical tape degrades, comes apart, it looks awful. You get the adhesive leaks and oozes on different parts, and it makes a mess. So I have the PAC harness. I wired everything up, shrink wrapped everything, and then I wrapped it in some fabric tape. One thing you want to do, even though I've already done it, before you wrap all this up and make it nice and neat, you want to hook it up to the radio. Just temporarily hook up all your connections, turn the radio on, and try it and make sure everything works. One issue I ran into, I couldn't get the factory backup camera to work with the adapter that was supplied by Crutchfield, which is this right here. It's a 6-volt camera. And what I found out was that there's a blue-white wire that comes out of the PAC unit. It's labeled as amplifier turn-on input, and even though I don't have a factory amplifier, well, I assumed I didn't need it because I don't have a factory amplifier. It wouldn't work until I connected that wire to the output from the Pioneer radio. Bluetooth module for the factory radio is separate under the dash here, and this connection here does not actually go direct to the accessory connection under the center console. It goes first to that Bluetooth module, which is disabled when you take out the factory radio, and then goes to the center console. And I believe that is the reason why it doesn't work. So I just ran the USB cable supplied by Pioneer through the center console, and there's a hole in here that was already there by the factory. They was able to just pass it through and into the center console, and it's fine. It's not ideal, but it works. And the other thing I wanted to show you before we close this up is all these connections. This yellow RCA is the backup camera input, Alright, this connection right here is my steering wheel adapter that comes from comes off of the pack module right here. And I don't think I actually mentioned this, but if you look at, there's a switch on this, a little rotary switch with an arrow. You see how that's pointing to number 7. Before you hook this up, they make it very clear that you have to turn that switch or that arrow to a certain number depending on which brand of radio you have. So make sure you do that before you connect this. Here we have the antenna. These right here are my RCAs for my amplifiers. This is in the back there, that is the main input for the radio. This right here, that is the auxiliary input. I didn't connect the USB, the other end of that USB cable from the Pioneer because it's a little short, but it's right there. So if I plugged it in, you wouldn't be able to see the back of the radio. And I also have the input for the mic. I ran the mic through the dash, and I used to try and hide these things, but it's a pain, and really, you don't really need to. So there it is. So a little bit of double-sided tape, and it kind of disappears on, at least on this dashboard. Went through all my wiring connections, everything looked great. So here we are, I'm gonna put the bolt back in the bottom. I got my magnet on there so I don't lose that little bolt. I'll put that in there. Now you just want to go in the reverse of how you took it apart. So then this plastic piece, make sure you got your white clips still on there. Line up the tabs, and then just like you took it off, push it on evenly. And then we have the last and final piece here. Make sure that you don't have any wires in the way of these vents where the output goes into the ductwork, you know, so that it might get, just in case it gets in the way or something like that. Make sure you connect this connector back up. And again, I'm going to line everything up, make sure it's lined up before you start pushing on it. And then you just in reverse of what you did. And that's it.